So yeah, so what? So last day we actually were discussing the how to the various aspect and modules of the PyMol, right? And we talked about how the PyMol can actually help you to perform various functions, and we found that there are various functions that we can do, and what are the things like and how to use PyMol, what are the different functions of PyMol. Okay, so now, but we are not done yet. We are going to again continue with that, and we're going to finish this off first. That for the different aspect of PyMol. So we'll start with the molecule, the same molecule that the molecule that we docked. Okay. So we'll start with that. Let's keep only a single. Yeah, let's keep a single molecule here. Okay. Okay. So yes, so this HPC blind docking server, the portion is that it's not only it's not that it only can dock the molecule at wherever at any possible sites, but it also provides very deep information about the binding affinity, about the various aspect of the residues with which that molecule is binding to, what are the residues that is actually interacting with it. Okay, so first, if we simply unzip the file, we are going to have a file folder like this. So first of all, let me say just a minute. Okay, so if you now open it up, the first thing you're going to see is that to find the binding affinity. Okay, so the binding affinity means with what affinity are the various ligands binding to this particular molecule, because I have several molecule, not a single molecule, but binding to different locations, right? Since a blind docking server, it's going to act and bind to any possible site. Okay, but are all the possible sites a good site? To know about that and to know about the affinity that each site carries, and the molecule carries to bind with a particular thing, first we get the idea about these clustered affinities. In the clustered affinities field, we are going to get the overall picture of the energy, the energetics of the whole binding. So in this case, this is the first molecule. The first molecule is binding. These are all the binding affinities. Okay, and you see first I have the Gauss, then we have the Gauss 2 binding, then we have the repulsion, the hydrophobic interaction, the hydrogen bonds, and these are the contributions for the first site. So we see that we can find that the hydrogen bonding residues for the oxygen. Of course, the hydrogen bond can only be formed by the oxygen, nitrogen, and what other atom can form hydrogen bonding apart from oxygen, nitrogen, and come on. This is really easy. What atom apart from hydrogen and nitrogen can form hydrogen bond, oxygen and nitrogen?
It's carbon.
Not carbon, but fluorine. Okay, fluorine, oxygen, and nitrogen. These three atoms have the hydrogen bonding potential, and of course the fluorine has much more. So in this case, as you can see, this is the overall skeleton of the whole molecule. This is the skeleton of the whole molecule. You have the oxygen and carbon, and you see the first oxygen, it can form the hydrogen bonding potential, and the contribution of the first oxygen towards hydrogen bonding potential is approximately minus 0.2 kilocalorie per mole. But as you see, the another oxygen, the last oxygen, it can actually give it has a potential of 0.6 kilocalorie per mole. You get to see the hydrogen bonding potential of each and every atom, and since the carbon does not partake into any hydrogen bonding, you see nothing. But apart from it, you can also see the contribution of this particular molecule towards the repulsion. Towards repulsion, it has a contribution of this particular carbon, the carbon 8, it has the highest contribution, and similarly the thing is same for the Gauss 2 and for the hydrophobic interactions also. You can see the overall scheme of each and every atom, the contribution of each and every atom against this particular binding energies. Okay, so this is the first option at where you can actually calculate and see the binding energetics of your molecule. And not only that, if you simply, let's move on to the second picture, and you see this is the overall picture of the first molecule, that's the total affinity that it gives. Okay, the total affinity that this particular molecule has, the total affinity means the Kd value. It has the Kd value of -6 kilocalorie per mole. Okay, and among this -6, the maximum potential or the maximum contribution comes from the Gauss2. Then you have the potent contribution of Gauss1 here, the hydrophobic contributions, the hydrogen bond, the hydrophobic contributions, the hydrogen bond contribution, and this is the rotational contribution. Okay, so like this, the same in this particular folder, you get to see the hydrogen bonding potential and of each and every molecule, each and every site specifically. Okay, this is the two picture in a single frame, so that you can get to know about the first molecule here. So this is about this first molecule, this one. What I showed you was about this one, this particular molecule. The molecule, if the molecule binds to in this particular location, then this is the energy contribution that this molecule has towards this location. And what about the next site? Now if you think about the next site, then the second molecule, or not the second molecule, similar molecule, but when it's binding to another location, when binding to the second location, see, this is the energy contribution. Now as you can see that binding energy at the second position is much higher. So what about the second position? This is the second position. See, in this particular position, the affinity or the Kd value of this particular binding is much higher than the first molecule. The first molecule had a roughly of -6, but it has crossed this. Okay, so this is the, like this for each and every site you can actually visualize and see the energy contributions, how this particular molecule is interacting with all the other molecules, and that's it. Okay, so this is the, just by seeing this molecule, you don't have to calculate the Kd values. Okay, so this particular docking server gives you so it actually gives you the idea that if you have devised a novel molecule and you are allowing that molecule to bind to your chosen target, then this particular site gives you the idea about what location is it binding with much more higher affinity, so that you can find and select the accurate binding site. And obviously if this molecule is not binding to the active site and the inhibitor site, then it has plenty of locations where this molecule can bind to. But had it been an enzyme, then of course you had to use and suppose you have designed an inhibitor, then of course we are not concerned about the inhibitor binding elsewhere on the particular protein. We are more concerned about binding of that inhibitor into the active site. Okay, so like this you can actually visualize and quantify the energetics of each and every binding, and what location to select, why to select, and you get the idea about these are the possible explanation of your selection. These are the possible explanation of your selection, that yes, I have selected this site because of this contribution, because it is binding to this location with this much intensity, and that's what. But the next point then comes is what are the binding, what are the anchors of the protein, what are the locations or sites or the residues to which this particular molecule is binding to, right? Of course the molecule is interacting with the particular protein, but what are the locations at which position, or what are the residues it is actually involving to bind? So to answer that, just the next slide, the clustered interaction, it has all the interaction poses. Just a minute, let me open it up. So see, this particular molecule is binding to here, and this particular thing you can see it is binding to here. Okay, but next session 5, for the first position, you now know what are the residues that this particular molecule is involving to bind up. For example, in this particular case, it is utilizing the serine 359, the lysine 357, lysine 356, arginine 355, glutamic acid, phenylalanine, lysine, and these are the key interactors of the protein that are interacting with this particular molecule, and not only the residue, but you can also get to see the atoms with which it is interacting. The deep blue bonds, these deep blue bonds, you can see there are two type of interaction. One, you have the deep blue bonds, then you have the dashed lines. The deep blue bonds show you the hydrogen bonds. The deep blue bonds show the hydrogen bond, and the hydrogen bond is because that those are the much more higher affinity bond. Though the bond between this particular valine 341 and this particular residue here, it can break up, but the tendency of breaking up hydrogen bond is you need a much more energy to break up the hydrogen bond. So you can actually visualize and see what are the residues it is interacting to. For example, in this particular case of valine, this particular residue, how to know which atom of valine is actually involved in this particular interaction? You simply zoom up and just right click on the atom or the position this molecule is making a bond. Just right click, simply right click, and you can see this is the molecule, the valine 341, but what is the atom? The CG1, the gamma carbon. The first gamma carbon is of this valine is interacting with this particular atom. And what is this atom? This is the carbon atom. So it's making an interaction with this ligand. The carbon of this particular ligand is making an interaction with this. So as a result, you can visualize which atoms are there, what are the interactions, and what are the residues it is interacting to, and what is the distance between their interaction. For example, you can see that the distance for this interaction is 3.7 angstrom. The distance between these interactions are 3.7 angstrom. The distance between these hydrogen bonds are 3 angstrom and 3.1 angstrom. Now the lower the interaction, the much better and much higher affinity the interaction is, because in this particular case you see the hydrogen bond has a distance of 4 angstrom. So that means this interaction is not that what's the term? I'm forgetting the term. The interaction is not that higher with respect to these, because it has a distance of 3 angstrom. So that means if they are close, since these two atoms are much more close, they have a much higher interaction capacity. Okay, so like this you can actually visualize and quantify and analyze not only the core of the protein but also the residue of the protein which is partaking in this particular interaction. And this is really important. You know why? Because it's not always that you devise a ligand to bind to a particular protein, but sometimes you need to devise a ligand to bind to a particular residue. Because for example, in case of insulin, the 23rd asparagine, the insulin, it's a very short protein, very low molecular weight protein, only 5.8 kd. But the 23rd asparagine, that particular molecule is really important. Why? Because insulin, if you simply keep insulin in a vial, you know that we can get the insulin from market, but because people that used to take insulin, right? It's a drug. So but that in particular insulin, it gets aggregated, it gets fibrillated if kept for a long time. Even though you keep that molecule in 4 degrees centigrade, if even after if you keep it for a long time, it gets aggregated. And the main reason for this aggregation is the 23rd asparagine. So that's why if you keep 100 molecules of insulin and if you store it, after 1 month or after 2 months, you get to see that among that 100 molecule, almost 20 molecule or 70 molecule have been precipitated. So that means there is a loss of 30% loss. There is a 30% or 20% or 10% loss. Now to inhibit this, the various companies, the companies which produce the insulin like Eli Lilly and Co. and various companies, they came up with a particular ligand that can actually prevent this fibrillation. And how to prevent the fibrillation? And since this asparagine 23rd asparagine is really important for fibrillation, they have devised a ligand that can go and bind to this 23rd asparagine. Now if the particular molecule is binding to all of the 23rd asparagine of all the insulin, then that particular amino acid is not free to bind to other to asparagine and precipitate. but that's not 100% because you see that even though they have made a devised a ligand that can prevent the fibrillation, but that's also not 100% preventable. You get to see that you can find that approximately though the previously almost 70 to 80% of the insulin used to get fibrillated, now you get to see that only 10% or 20% of the insulin is getting fibrillated, though it is less, but still it's not 100% accurate, right? So actually there's a vast research is actually going on to develop a ligand that can prevent this particular insulin fibrillation, because that's a huge loss for the industry as well. It's a huge loss for industry as well. And successfully actually I had actually worked with a particular project in which we have developed a ligand that can bind to the 23rd asparagine, prevent the insulin fibrillation even in room temperature. And it's really great because you know that you have to keep the insulin at 4, you have to store insulin at 4 degrees centigrade. So if you can prevent that aggregation and you can store insulin at room temperature, then the cost severely comes down, because you have to maintain a cold chain. You have to maintain a fully cold chain circle for transporting the insulin to every vendors, and that actually increases the insulin price. So if you simply remove the cold chain, you can develop a ligand, and if you remove the cold chain, then the price of insulin also comes down. So like that, you also sometimes you need to see that whether your ligand is binding to that particular residue or not, because sometimes the binding to a particular residue is very important. And this same thing happens for other protein also. There are some proteins which gets mutated, right? A certain amino acid gets mutated, and that particular mutation gives rise to several complications in the body. So if we can develop a ligand, and to prevent that complication, we have to develop a ligand and we have to target that particular residue, not only the protein but that particular residue, right? So it's really important to see that whether my molecule can bind to that residue or not, and if it is binding to that residue, what are the various interactions that it's playing at. Okay, so these are the things that we can actually visualize from this docking circuit also. You get to see, and not only that, for every molecule, since it has 10 ligands, so for every ligand, for that every place, you get to see that interactions. For example, this is the second set. And in this particular case, you get to see that this molecule is binding to these locations, and it's incorporating these residues for its interaction. So like this, you can see now. See, in this particular case, the hydrogen, the distance between these particular bonds are 2.8 and 2.9 angstrom, and that's pretty low. So that means this bond is highly stable. This particular bond is highly stable. That 2.9 and 2.8 distance means this particular bond is highly stable. It is really it's really to break up this bond, it's really not possible to break up this bond, the distance of this hydrogen bond. It's really difficult to break up this hydrogen bond. So that means that if the ligand is binding to this location, then the energy or the binding energy must be really high. Okay, so like this, if you simply develop a ligand and you have a target protein, simply use that up into this HPC by HPC server, and you can actually simply dock your molecule to anywhere, any place, and you get to see all the residues where it is interacting with that molecule, and what are the residues it is incorporating, and that. Okay, next you get to see the clustered poses. The molecule, or what are the pose that this molecule is bringing up. Okay, see, this is the pose of the molecule. The pose of the molecule is how the molecule is actually behaving, where it is turning up, what is the rotational bond between you know that the number of rotatable bonds you give, the more flexible the molecule becomes, right? So it's up to you that so it's actually up to you to make up for the flexibility, because if you want your molecule to be more flexible, you have to give more rotatable bonds. But it's not that you can give any number of rotatable bonds, because if you remember, in the ADME server, in the Swiss ADME server, I have shown you that each molecule, and for drug likeness also, there is a limitation of number of rotatable bonds a particular drug like molecule can have, because providing too many rotatable bonds makes this particular molecule so flexible that it is not going to keep on interacting with a single residue. It's going to make a bond, then break a bond, because it's flexible. It's not staying in its true form. It's simply like it's simply like a child, or simply like the freelancer who doesn't stick up to a particular job. They are freelancer, they are simply sticking to a particular job now, but right now, but after 1 2 months or after a year, they're going to move up to a new job, and that's their life. Okay, so simply they do it like this. So now to remove that too much flexibility means that the particular bond is going to break up, because the molecule will move a lot. During simulation, the molecule is going to move a lot, and you are going to see a number of bond making and bond making and bond breaking. And if you keep your molecule too rigid, then also your molecule will not move to form a bond with some nearby elements, because your molecule is too rigid. Because your molecule needs to move a little bit, because it needs to loosen up and move a little bit to make a bond with some other residue that is just near its vicinity. But if the molecule has no rotatable bonds, then the molecule can't rotate and it will be too rigid. So yeah, that's why there is a limitation to number of rotatable bonds that you can keep. And I think that number is 4. I think I forgot, but you can simply check it up in my previous class videos. I discussed that what's the number of rotatable bonds that a particular molecule must have. Okay, so that's all about this. These are the various information that you can actually get from this particular molecule. Okay, and on this particular server, and actually you can use this to your need actually. Okay, so just a minute. Okay, so now I'm going to show you one thing. Now suppose you have a molecule and your target protein. Okay, you have docked it in a server. Now suppose you want to find the distance between these molecules or distance between these atoms, because in the previous section where we found we already had a distance, but sometimes you're not going to get the distance associated. Suppose you have downloaded a particular molecule. For example, let me show you. Suppose let me download a particular okay, it has this molecule. Fine. So suppose I have a molecule or I have a protein which is co-crystallized with a particular ligand. Okay, so every time if you download a particular molecule, most of the time you're going to find that you have a co-crystallized molecule. Molecule is co-crystallized with a particular ligand. Okay, for example, let us find the ligand. Let me highlight that ligand. Okay, these are the ligand. Let me change the color to magenta. Okay, and let me hide everything else. Okay, so suppose I have this molecule. These are a ligand. Okay, these can be any ligand. Okay, just for purpose I'm just showing you. Let me hide this stretch also. Okay. Okay, suppose this is a ligand that you are, a molecule that you have downloaded. Now suppose you now in this case you don't have any information about the distance bit of this particular atom and the distance between these residues from this particular molecule. Okay, so now you need to find the distance. So let me first highlight the residues in this vicinity. Okay, fine. So now suppose I want to know that whether this particular Now in the earlier case, you see the computer or the program automatically calculates the distance for you, and you can visualize the distance. But what if you now need to know the distance of this particular molecule from this one here? They are obviously interacting, but you don't know the distance between them. So how to calculate it? See, okay, now please focus a little more. Now what we're going to do, we're going to go to wizard. Okay, we're going to go to the wizard panel. On the top panel you have file, edit, build and all. We are going to go to wizard, and from wizard we're going to come to measurement. Okay, just click on measurement. So now as I've clicked on measurement, see you first have a, please click on the first atom. So let me click on the, suppose I need to find the distance between this atom. So I've selected this atom. Now see, please click on the second atom. So I will click on the second atom, and now you see the distance is given. Now you see the distance is 4.4 angstrom between this atom and this atom. Between these two atoms, the distance is 4.4 angstrom, and like this you can select any more atom. Again, now suppose I want to find the distance between this atom here and this molecule here, suppose. So no, that's a different type, selected a different thing. So see, if you make a wrong selection, don't worry. In this particular right hand panel, see there's under the measurement option, there's an option called delete the last object. Delete the last object. Just click on it and see that object has been deleted. Now again select the first molecule, now the second atom. Now see the distance between these two are 5.5 angstrom. What about the distance between these two atoms? See, it has a distance of 2.7 angstrom. So like this, actually I can calculate the distance between any two residue, or any between a ligand and the protein. You can even calculate the distance between two residues of a similar compound. From suppose these two atoms belong to same protein, but let me calculate the distance between them and separate by 3.7 angstrom. So like this you can calculate the distance between any two atoms. Okay, and after you have done, you can simply click on done, or you can click on delete all measurement. Suppose I don't need this last measurement, so I will click on delete last measurement. See, the last measurement has been deleted. And then if you simply click on done, now see, when you have selected this molecule, if you click on anywhere, it is going to give you a distance. It is going to give you a distance. So now to move up and to visualize the object, what you have to click on done. You have to click on done, and only after you click on done, then you click on anywhere, you are not going to get that particular thing. You're not going to show up measurement. Now again, to see measurement, I'm again repeating it. What to do? Simply go and click on wizard. Under wizard you have an option called measurement, and as I select the measurement, now I have to select two molecules between which I want to find the distance. So again I will select, suppose I will select this particular atom here, and again I am going to select a particular atom here. Okay, now see the distance between them is 3.9 angstrom. So like this you can now measure the distance between either between two proteins or between two ligand and a protein. Sometimes it's also essential to find the distance between two proteins, because if you are working with a suppose you are working with a dimeric peptide or dimeric protein, then that means or you are docking two proteins, then that means those two proteins are interacting with one another, or those two are docked with one another. Now to find the distance between them, or which residues are interacting with what, and then you can actually find them out. Because if the distance is too great, then of course they are not interacting. For example, in this particular case, the distance between they have a distance of 5.5. So that means it's really less that these two molecules are interacting. These two atoms are interacting with one another. But the probability is more that this particular, it has an interaction. Of course, the 2.7, they have a distance of 2.7. So they must interact. And also, not only that, they are also interacting with 3.9. The less the distance, the much better or more powerful the interactions are. Okay, so like this you can actually select and form the distance, find the distance between two objects in a in PyMol. Okay, so that's done. Now sometimes it's really not easy to visualize. I have a black background, but it's not easy to visualize everything in a black background. Suppose you need to change the background, then what to do? Simply go on display, and you select the background, and under background you can select the white. So see, you get the white background. It becomes, for me it's much easier to visualize in the white background, to work in white background. And you can also change the background, not only white, you have the light gray option, then you have gray option, and the black option is given automatically. The black option is already selected. Okay, so I'm going to keep it white, and you can also change the background to opaque. Okay, but it doesn't matter much. Okay, so like this you can change the background. Now suppose for the visualization part, suppose I have this molecule. Okay, suppose this molecule is now you need to change this particular molecule how it looks. Okay, suppose it's for publication purpose. So now what to do, simply go on to display and go to settings, and under settings, since this is a cartoon molecule, suppose it's a cartoon molecule, so under cartoon molecule you have an option called round helices, and then you have an option of fancy helices. I'm going to click on fancy helices first. Let me focus on, and I'm going to get a visual idea. So this is the helix, round helix only. Okay, but for publication purpose, let me go to settings, and if I select under cartoon, I have the fancy helix. Now see, as I select the fancy helix, the helix structure changes. It becomes much lucrative, right? The figure or the final structure becomes much lucrative. Like, for example, again go to cartoon, and then you suppose now you have these loops. See how the loops are behaving. It has a very tendency of it's so much hodgepodge. Obviously loops have no structure, so it's going to assume any structure. But for your visualization purpose, you can also change that. Simply go to setting, go to cartoon, and then simply click on smooth helix. Now see, the helix becomes much more smoother. Much smoother. You don't see those hodgepodge areas. It becomes much smoother. Now remember, these now smoothening the loop does not mean that you are changing how the loop looks. You are not changing the actual structure of your protein. This is only for visualization. I'm again repeating, this is only for visualization or only for publication, to make a picture. Okay, to just get an image, or so that you can publish. Suppose if you have docked them, then of course you need to publish this, right? Then of course you need to have this ready, and now I can simply keep it now under settings. See, cartoon, if I remove it, this particular loop was not looking good, so if I simply smooth it, then it looks good. Now like that you can also change the helix to the alphas to fancy. You can change them to fancy seeds. You can simply select the fancy seeds, and it is going to look like fancy molecules. And then you can also, let me change the smooth loops, and apart from it you also have the option to see now the helixes. Now generally the helices looks like that, but sometimes you get to see that not all people uses that. You can also simply change the helix to cylindrical form. See, if I give, this becomes a cylindrical form. The cylindrical form is this portion is a helix. So like this you can also change the how the helix look like. Okay, let me hide the sticks first. Since I have hidden the sticks, see, the molecules also got hidden. So that was not my intention, but you know how to do it and how to bring it back. Now apart from it, there's another option. See, under transparency option, you have the transparency. Now why the transparency is required? Because suppose let me highlight it, and okay, just a minute. Just a minute, let me change this. Okay, suppose you need to highlight this. Okay, suppose you need to highlight this. Now if you change your transparency, now see if you can change the transparency. Simply go to settings, and there's an option called transparency. Under transparency we have the cartoon, and now let's keep it at 40%. Now see, the cartoon have been, it's not highlighted, only the sticks are getting highlighted. Only the sticks are getting highlighted in this particular case. So and you can increase and decrease the transparency also. Now remember, these are actually a part of but a minute, transparency cartoon. Yes. Now suppose if I give 80% transparency, now it simply vanishes up. Now all these are actually a part of your publication purpose. These are only required for publication purpose. Okay, it's not required for to perform anything, because of course, but it's also publication is also important, right? Because if you don't make a high quality image, if your image doesn't look like a classy image, then it's the better the, and it's a known fact, the better the images are, you get much more higher chance of getting selected in a particular journal. And of course the research also matters. It's not that the research doesn't matter, but of course along with research you also need to make some high quality images, and these can actually make you these are actually required to make those image high quality. Okay, and after you have done, you can simply use a particular command, that is ray. You can simply click in ray here and see I have ray, and you simply click on enter. And if you click on ray and you enter, the image becomes much smooth, much high contrast, much clear and crisp image. But in my case it's not going to open up, because in this particular computer I don't have the licensed version of this PyMol. So even if I make a picture, it is going to show you that you have no license file over that picture. But for this you need to buy the license of PyMol, and this also takes a lot of time to do up. So make sure you have a high quality processor. You install the PyMol. If you need to perform the ray, you have a high processor computer. Then also you can then only you can actually use this thing. Since the ray has not yet started yet, and again, okay, not respond. That happens if you have a low, if your computer is not up to the mark. Just let it do. Okay, any questions till this part? No. Okay, now one more thing I need to say, that even though I have shown you the cartoon variations of everything, you can actually you see that when I click on them, you have option of sphere. You can perform all of this in the surface also, in a sticks method also, in anywhere you can perform all these experiments. You simply move up, go there, perform those just like I have shown you, and just play with this PyMol, and you will get to know how to perform the same thing for the surface also. For surface you simply need to make this PyMol, this particular protein, need to represent the protein as surface, and then you can simply make it you can keep the transparency up or down. You can, for example, in this particular case here, you see generally the receptor that I have shown you first, it had a very transparent the surface was really a transparent surface, right? That's because the transparency was set to 40%. That's why you actually get to see the transparency. Okay, that had went up. Great. So like this you can actually play up. Now see, under settings we have the same thing for ribbon, you have the same thing for surface, you have the same thing for volume, the transparency. You can perform anything for the line and sticks, everything you can perform everything. So you can actually play with this, make sure you keep everything on stick, and then perform the same thing and see what they can do and what they can do, and you can perform this on your own time, and you get to learn many more things from this also. Okay, understand? Okay, so now I'm going to perform one more thing to you. So let me first remove the transparency. Okay, now see, now the option is that now see, in the measure option, suppose you need to change the color of this dash. This is yellow. In the measure you can simply go there and click on suppose I need to keep it orange, click on orange, see it becomes orange. And suppose you need to change this color to cyan, click it, see it becomes cyan. So you can also change the color of these dashes. You can change the color of these dashes. You can even hide the distances. Suppose you can even hide the 5, it's a 5.5, right? So you can hide also. Simply go on to it, click on, see, in the measure 4 I went to hide and clicked on levels. See, the 3.3 distance have been hidden. Now again, to show the hidden, simply click on it and click on levels, and you want to get to see the, sometimes you don't require to show the level, you are not focusing on the level, then simply remove the level. Okay, you can simply remove the level, and you don't have to have the labels here. Okay, and you can simply visualize that these are really interacting. You don't to give the distance between them. Okay, so you can do this. Achha, now one more thing. Suppose you have a protein. Now you need to mutate that protein. Okay, now suppose I need to mutate that protein. Let me hide this. Okay, and let me hide the measurement also. Okay, see. Now suppose I need to mutate a particular protein. Okay, so in this particular case, what is this residue? What is this residue? This is a phenylalanine, right? This is a phenylalanine. Now suppose I need to mutate this phenylalanine to some other residue. How to perform that? Again, simply go to wizard. Then just below measurement, you see an option called mutagenesis. Okay, under mutagenesis, obviously I'm going to select the protein because my molecule is protein. I will select the protein. Now the first thing is that pick a residue. I'm going to pick this residue. I have selected the mutation. I have selected the residue. Now in this case, just a minute. Sorry, this is a proline. It had a nitrogen here, right? Sorry, I'm really sorry. That's why it's a proline. Sorry. So yeah, so let me go to mutagenesis first. Okay, so it says the pick a residue. I'm going to select this residue here. Okay, now after selecting the residue, see under this same thing you have an option called no mutation. Now click under no mutation and select the residue that you want it to change to. So I have a proline. Suppose I need to change it to arginine. Suppose. Okay, so I will select arginine. Under arginine you have an option of arginine and arginine. I will select the arginine. Okay, now see the residue has changed to arginine. Now you get to see the proline also, but you have the residue change the arginine. Okay, now I'm going to, so since this particular proline had 2 rotamers, it had 2 rotamers, that's why it is actually showing the proline also, the first rotamer of proline and then the other residue of arginine. Now let me select a different residue. Suppose I selected, so anywhere I click on, it's going to do up. So after that, simply click on apply. So if I click on apply, see the molecule, this particular residue has been changed to this molecule. Now again, let me show you. I will select the proline here. I have selected the proline. Okay. Now I will mutate it to arginine, or you can simply mutate it to glutamine or something. Let me mutate it to glutamine. After I select the mutate to glutamine, I will click on apply. Now see that proline has been changed to glutamine. So like this, you can also apply mutations in your protein. You can apply mutations in your protein and then perform the same MD simulation. Suppose you have a protein. You have 2 types of protein. One the wild type protein, another the mutated protein. Now suppose you don't have the structure of the mutated protein. Now if it's a mutation of a single site mutation, then the structure is not going to hamper much. But to see again that if that particular mutation has an impact on the structure or not, you can simply mutate it and then perform the MD simulation. Now you have to, in this case, you have to perform the simulation of both the wild type and the mutant. You have to perform the simulation of both wild type and mutant and then see whether they are, if there is any structural changes or not, if that particular ligand, is it interacting with this one, because in wild type you can see that particular ligand was interacting with this residue, but in mutation it's not interacting. Okay, so that means suppose now if this mutation occurs in the active site of an enzyme, then of course the active site might not work properly, right? The enzyme kinetics might change. So to visualize and see whether how much changes, why the ligand, why mutation in the active site is not allowing the ligand to bind to it, you need to perform the simulation. So like this, in that case, you need to simply, you can perform these mutations. Okay, now again I'm going to show you how to do it just one more time. Okay, so in this particular case, I will select a different molecule. Let me select it up. Okay, I will change this. Okay, so I will simply go to wizard, click on mutagenesis and select protein. Now select the residue where you need to change it to, and under the mutation you can select the amino acid to which you need to change it to. Suppose I will change it to phenylalanine. So I will select phenylalanine and this is how the molecule will look like. This is how the molecule will look like. It will show you this is how the molecule looks like, and then simply click on apply. Now see, the molecule has been changed to phenylalanine. So like this you can now if you need to suppose save it, yeah, if you are done, simply click on done. Now if you need to save this molecule, then go to file and then simply select on export molecule. Under export molecule, now under export molecule you need to select the whole molecule. Okay, you need to select the whole molecule. So simply select the whole molecule. This is the 6mx is the name of the protein, 6mxs. Okay, so now click on save and it will get set to, now simply select the PDB ID and then give the name mutated, suppose 6xms mutation. Okay, 6xms underscore mute. Select, save it, and now since I have set it on download, let me go to download and let me see whether it works or not. Now you see that same thing happens. Now you have the same molecule but with the desired mutation. Now let me see where the mutation was in this case. The mutation was on 7th amino acid on B chain. So let me go to 7th amino acid on B chain. Yeah, B chain 7. This is C phenylalanine. We have the F. We have F written here. That means this molecule has changed to phenylalanine. This particular molecule residue. This particular residue has been changed to phenylalanine. So we know that I have successfully created a mutation. Now I can use this particular molecule to again perform a docking. Suppose the ligand was binding to this residue. So now after if I mutate it, the ligand, so if there is no mutation now if there is no interaction between the mutated residue and the ligand, then of course the ligand will not interact. Then again I can perform the same docking with the same ligand and with this mutated protein. Now see if the docking structure changes or not. Understand? Okay, so any question till this part? No. Okay, fine. So that's how you can actually use PyMol to perform various functions. It's not only a visualization tool, but it also is also a research tool, like and you can perform this mutation, create the distance, find out the distance between them, and of course you can also make some publication worthy pictures through it. All right, so these are the things that you can actually perform through this PyMol, and that's actually done. Okay, now the next thing is that okay, so this part is over. Now I'm going to just give you a basic idea. But now are you any of you performing the 2-month course? I don't know. Okay, I think no. Then okay, then I'm going to go through the basic simulation, MD simulation, over the basic thing, over only the basic thing, because that's for the second that's a 2-month course. Okay, so as I was talking about the MD simulation, what is MD simulation? The first thing is what is MD simulation? Now MD simulation means in docking you get the idea that this particular molecule is behaving and interacting with this particular ligand. Right, this molecule is interacting, sorry, the ligand is actually interacting with a particular molecule. Now after they have, through the docking you get to see the interaction sites. So these are the sites where the molecule is interacting. But will it be the same interaction even after few 100 nanosecond, after 100 nanosecond? I don't know, because if you why do we perform the MD simulation? Because what happens is that, see, this is what happens in MD simulation. It's not that everything changes, but there are very tiny fluctuations. There are very tiny fluctuations that occurs in the protein as well as in the ligand, and these tiny fluctuations, they can sometimes create a bond or break a bond. For example, in some case, let me show you an example. In docking we can see that actually the molecule is interacting, but after several rounds of simulation I found that this particular molecule is getting away from the structure and they are not interacting. For example, let me show you one thing. Simulation. Yes, let me show you the structure. Now see, this is a snapshot in 10 nanosecond snapshot. Okay, at 10 nanosecond running, I found that this particular molecular peptide is binding to this structure, to this DNA structure, like this way. And this is the 50 nanosecond. Now see, the structure has changed. See, the structure of this particular quadruplex, this particular molecule has changed. See, the peptide is similar, but the structure of this molecule has changed. And even after, now see, in this particular thing, the quadruplex is a quadruplex, and this quadruplex is actually stabilized by these two potassium ions. These two potassium ions can actually stabilize this quadruplex. Okay, but see, after 100 nanosecond, the potassiums, this molecule gets degraded. It breaks up, the quadruplex breaks up, and you can see that these potassium ions are moving out of that particular quartet. That means it is not stabilizing. And see, after 100 nanosecond, the total structure has been unfolded. You get to see the total structure has unfolded. So even though in this early case you can see that this molecule in docking, I could see that this particular molecule is binding to this particular site and is showing a beautiful structure. But after some simulation, I see that this peptide is not stabilizing the quadruplex, but it's rather breaking up the whole quadruplex. It's a DNA unfolder. Okay, so this peptide is a DNA unfolder. So in this case, that molecule has unfolded this particular structure. Okay, now see, the structure is not there. And now next I tried to find out the residues, and this is the final nanosecond. So see, this molecule is totally breaking up. It's totally breaking up the whole structure. So you get to see that there is nothing. So that is why we have to perform the MD simulation to know the end result, whether the thing that I am seeing in docking, is it happening, and is it stabilizing for after several nanosecond, because the molecule is going to change the structure. Okay, right? And if it's a very stabilizing structure, then the structure is not going to change a lot. But to make sure that those interactions are the final interactions, for example, the interactions that I have shown you, like this interactions. Suppose in docking I can see that these molecules are interacting, but are these molecules or are these interactions are going to be present even after 100 nanosecond? We don't know. And to see, because after 100 nanosecond or 1 microsecond, the interactions which are there, that's the final interaction. That's the final interaction between your ligand and your protein. The docking interactions are not final. But if these interactions are really strong, if this hydrogen bond and if these interactions are really strong, then of course these interactions will be present there. And even after 100 nanosecond simulation, I found that this interaction, this hydrogen bond between this molecule and this lysine 356 is still staying there. Then I know that, of course, this is the most stable interaction between this ligand and this residue. Now I am going to build up and optimize my ligand so that this molecule shows a very high affinity interaction and anchors to this particular point. Okay, and like this I can now modify my interaction. And suppose after some interaction, after some nanosecond, I found that this particular residue is moving up. It's not interacting with this residue here. It's not interacting with this lysine, lysine 357. It's not interacting with this molecule. Rather, it's interacting with much more with this serine 359. Suppose it might happen, right? So in that case, what I'm going to do, I'm going to perform that. I'm going to attach some other group here so that the distance between them further decreases, so that I'm not focusing on the interaction here, so that I can make sure that this point is interacting with this molecule with much higher affinity, so that the two end of my ligand is actually anchoring to two different points and it tethers to the same domain. If I can tether the ligand to the same domain with very high interaction, then it's really possible that the ligand is not going to move up and is not going to break up or move away from the protein. Okay, so that's the sole reason that we need to perform this MD simulation. Okay, so that's what happens in MD simulation also. Okay, so that's why in MD simulation you get to see these results, that even after some fluctuations you get to see the structure, the dynamics and the thermodynamics of this interaction, and that's the final interaction that you see. Okay, now obviously the goal of this, now you can use this particular thermodynamics or this MD simulation. Now there are various methods of performing the MD simulation. You have GROMACS, you have AMBER, you have Schrodinger server to perform the simulation also. like okay, so generally I use amber, but there are people also use charm, Gromax. All are every more or less same thing. All of them are more or less same thing. They use the same force field and all, and that's how, because what happens is that this molecular dynamic simulation, it actually generates the information at the microscopic level, and that includes the atomic positions, the atomic velocities, okay, and the conversion of this microscopic information to macroscopic observable terms such as pressure, energy, heat capacity, etc. These require some statistical mechanics, okay, and the statistical mechanics is actually the fundamental to the study of this biological system by this molecular dynamic simulation. So though you see that whether this you see the differences you get to see the atomic nitty-gritty of the interaction. You get to see if that particular atom is interacting with this atom or not. But in MD simulation, along with the seeing the atomic fluctuations and the motions of the helix or the formations of the loops, you also convert those terms and find out through the MMPBS and GBBS. So we can convert it to, and we can see the heat capacity, we can see the binding affinity that that particular molecule has with the ligand, okay, and we can actually perform that. And that's why this now there are various kind of information that you get to see. You get to see the local motions, the rigid body motions, the large scale motions, and everything like this. You can actually find out through the amber, okay. And that's what happens. It's not that when performing the simulation, it's not that the whole protein structure is changing a lot, but even the tiny fluctuations, they create some deep impact onto a particular set. They create a very deep impact onto the whole protein, and those impacts are enough for a bond breaking or some other kind of bond forming, okay. So like this you can actually perform them, but one thing is for sure, that wherever you perform the docking in some minutes or within 30 minutes, you can actually perform the docking. It doesn't even take 30 minutes. It only takes around 10 to 15 minutes to perform a docking. And after the docking, but MD simulation takes a huge amount of time, and not only huge amount of time, it also depends upon the type of computer you have. If you don't have a very high processing computer, it's really impossible for you to perform the MD simulation. And why is it? Because the computation of this non-bonded interaction is the most computationally extensive step in MD simulation. And normally a typical atomistic MD simulation of example, suppose 1 lakh atoms, just over 100 nanosecond, it can take actually several days to complete on a standard HPC node. Now to understand why, the basic MD algorithm should be described, okay, because generally what MD does is it actually assigns the initial velocities to atoms of known position and potential, and then they compute the forces on all the atoms for a discrete time step. Now, generally it is generally a 2 femtosecond of time step generally, and this time step is actually a product of two things. One, the bonded interaction, and another there is non-bonded interaction, because of course it also calculates the van der Waals interactions, the hydrophobic interactions. Now these interactions are not bonded interactions. You can't see that in van der Waals interaction or in hydrophobic interaction, you don't see that this molecule is interacting with this one, okay. They have to be near to one another, and far away two molecules or two atoms are from one another, the interaction falls, right? And after computing these forces, it numerically solves the Newton's law of motion and updates the configuration. Now by configuration I mean the position and velocity of each atoms, okay. And after that it simply gives you the output information. Now this second and third step, that is computing the force of all atoms and then numerically solving this Newton's law, it is actually repeated for each and every atom in the system. And it is actually repeated because it is repeated tens of millions of times, because with each passing second, the structure and position of the molecule changes. See, in this particular case, if you simply think of this particular atom here, it will actually, so suppose this particular atom was now in an x0, y0, z0 position, and after 1 second it moved to x1, y1, z1. So it's going to compute all the parameters and forces when the particular atom is at x1, y1, z1. It will again calculate when that particular atom moves to x 1.5, y 2, z 1.5, and it will calculate this for all the atoms. And since all the atoms are changing their position, it's going to calculate all the atoms, it's going to compute it, it's going to give you an output, and then again as the atom changes, the position changes, the velocity changes, it's going to again perform the same thing over and over again. And so these are actually repeated several times. Okay, and that's why it's really slow. And the reason for the slow speed is actually primarily due to just one of these steps, and that of computing the force from non-bonded interactions. While the bonded interactions are actually limited to 4 partners, and it remained constant throughout the simulation, but the potential number of non-bonded interacting atoms is far, far greater, and it will change throughout the simulation. Now, generally, to keep this number reasonable, non-bonded interacting partners are usually limited to a specified cutoff radius. Now, generally we can keep it at 1 nanometer, or you can keep it at 8 angstrom distance, because suppose if you are keeping it at 1 nanometer, then what will happen? Then you will simply allow, or suppose you keep it at 8 angstrom, so that means you simply allow that any molecule which are within distance of 8 angstrom, you are going to compute all the non-bonded parameters of the atoms which are 8 angstrom apart from one another. And if 2 atoms are have the distance of more than 8 angstrom, you are not going to compute it. Now you can simply resume, you can also reduce this, even if the 8 angstrom is much higher, you can simply reduce it, you can keep the cutoff at 4 angstrom. So now having that is also going to save you some time, right? Because of course, because as the distance increases, the force obviously falls off, right? And then obviously we are not interested about finding the distance or the interaction, the hydrophobic or hydrophobic interaction between 2 atoms which are separated by distance of 10 angstrom. Okay, that's right. Because even if you keep it at 1 nanometer, then even within the 1 nanometer radius, there are something like 100 potential interacting atoms. And what's more, that every few steps, a new list of partner needs to be constructed as atoms, and they are prone to moving in and out of this cutoff radius. But interestingly, for some algorithm, this step can be handed off to a GPU, and that allows for a very substantial decrease in computing time. So it actually depends upon you that what type of system you have. If you have a very high GPU processing speed computer, then it's of course really easy to you to perform the calculation. But nonetheless, it generally takes around 2 to 3 days for a single run to complete, and that's reasonable. But of course, there are some workstation that can actually perform almost 70 nanosecond simulation in a day, and of course, then if you have that, and within 1.2 days you can simply finish up simulation of 100 nanosecond, and that's going to speed up your research much more. So that's a very good thing, and that's why this MD simulation is really difficult and all. Okay. So any questions, you all? No. Okay, then fine. So that will be all. So that's how we are going to end up the course here. To wrap up, how to prepare ligand, I have shown it in class 1st or 2nd class. Kindly watch the video. Okay, this was the video there. I have shown you how to prepare the ligand. I think in Mrityunjay you haven't started the class yet, but you can see the videos in, I think, in class 1 or class 2. Okay, you have that whole actually I dedicated the whole class on developing the ligand. Okay, so you can revisit that particular video and then come back to me if you have any question. Okay. Acha, now one thing that in the next class I'm going to give you some project. I'm going to give each one of you some project. I'm going to mail that project to you all, and you need to finish that project up, and of course while performing that particular project, and I'm going to give you some marks also, because that's how I think this course is designed, and in your certificate you're going to have that marks also. that you have received that this much percentage for this project. So don't worry, I'm not going to give any less marks to any of you, one of you. But whatever project I'm going to give you, I'm going to give it whatever I teach to. I'm going to give it from there on. So just to rewatch the videos, and if you have any questions, just ask me. And the project will be different for each one of you. And okay, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you some ligand and everything, and I'm going to ask you to perform a docking and find out whether this molecule is binding to here or not. So that will be your topic project, so that you get to use all the information or the knowledge that I've shared with you. You can get to use all those knowledge and information to build up your project. And of course, while developing the project, you might have some questions and all. I will be happy to help you. Okay, so don't worry about that. Don't think it as a test. Just think it as a training exercise, simply to make sure that you have learned everything and you don't have any confusion and like that. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to give you that project, and in the next class you can ask me any questions related to that project. Okay, I'm going to have a class there, and in that particular class you can ask me any questions related to that particular project, that how to do this or what do I mean by that, and I'm going to mail you the project, each one of you, by today or tomorrow. So you have 1 week to prepare, and the next class next week I'm going to again sit down and we're going to share that particular information. Okay.
Okay, sir.
Okay, fine. So that will be all then. Okay, then we'll meet again at the next class. Fine.